My name is Naomi. I'm 33. At 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon in September, I was standing in my own kitchen, holding a $5 million lottery check in one hand and divorce papers in the other, while my mother-in-law told me I'd never contributed a single dollar to this household. "You've been playing house with my son's money for 6 years," Diane said, her pearl necklace catching the light from the window I'd cleaned that morning. "Richard works 60-hour weeks while you doodle on your computer. It's embarrassing." My husband sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through his phone. He didn't look up. I set the lottery check face down on the counter. My hands were shaking. "I paid the mortgage last month. I've paid it every month for 3 years." "With what?" Diane laughed. It was a sharp sound like glass breaking. "Your little Etsy shop? Please. That makes what, $50 a month?" "I'm a graphic designer. I have clients. You have hobbies." "Have." She picked up the divorce papers and smoothed them against the granite countertop. The same granite I'd helped choose. The same kitchen I'd designed the layout for because Richard said I had an eye for these things. "Sign here. Page 7, page 12, and page 18. Richard's attorney already filed the separation paperwork last week." The floor tilted under me. "What separation paperwork?" Richard finally looked up from his phone. His face was blank like I was a stranger asking for directions. "The legal separation. We filed on September 3rd. You're being served today because the waiting period ended." September 3rd, 12 days ago. I'd made him breakfast that morning, scrambled eggs with chives from the garden. He'd kissed my forehead and said he'd be late because of a client dinner. Before I go on, if stories about standing up for yourself mean something to you, please hit like and subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now and what time is it there. "You filed for separation," I repeated slowly, "while we were still living together, sleeping in the same bed." "It's a financial protection," Diane said. She pulled out a chair and sat down like this was her house, like I was the guest. "Richard received a substantial bonus last quarter. We needed to ensure it stayed separate property before you decided to take half of everything he's earned." I looked at my husband, the man I'd married on a beach in Maui 6 years ago, the man whose mother had pulled me aside at the reception and whispered, "You'd better take care of him. He's not like other men. He's special." "How much was the bonus?" I asked. "That's none of your concern," Diane said. "What is your concern is this credit card debt, $60,000. Richard's attorney is being generous by only asking you to take half." I felt my face go hot. "What credit card debt? We don't have credit card debt." Richard slid a manila folder across the table. "Capital One Platinum. Opened in my name, but you're an authorized user. The statement's in there." I opened the folder. Capital One Platinum, $60,347.18. Charges going back 6 months. Hotels I'd never been to, restaurants I'd never eaten at. A jewelry purchase for $8,400 at Tiffany & Company on July 22nd. July 22nd. I'd been at my desk until 11 p.m., finishing a logo redesign for a tech startup in Austin. I had the timestamp on the final file. I'd sent it at 11:14 p.m. with an apology for missing dinner. "I didn't make these charges," I said. "You're an authorized user." Diane folded her hands on the table. She was wearing the diamond bracelet Richard had given her for her birthday. He'd asked me to pick it out. "In a divorce, you're liable for half. That's $30,173.59, plus attorney fees." My throat had gone completely dry. "Richard, tell me you didn't do this." He looked at me for 3 seconds. Then he looked at his mother. "Mom, can you give us a minute?" "Absolutely not." Diane's voice went hard. "She'll manipulate you. She always does. That's what users do, honey. They make you feel guilty for protecting yourself." That was her phrase. She'd said it at least 24 times over 6 years. At Thanksgiving, when I'd asked if we could host at our house for once. At Easter, when I'd suggested we spend the holiday with my family. At Richard's birthday party, when I'd planned a surprise and she'd showed up 3 hours early to redecorate because my balloons were tacky. Users make you feel guilty for protecting yourself. I set the credit card statement down very carefully. Something had clicked in my chest. Something cold and clear. "Where were you on July 22nd at 8:30 p.m.?" I asked Richard. "I don't remember. That was 2 months ago. Tiffany and Company, on Fifth Avenue in Manhattan. You charged $8,400 to this card. I was in our home office finishing a project. You were buying someone a bracelet." The kitchen went very quiet. I could hear the refrigerator humming, the clock above the stove ticking. Diane stood up. "Don't you dare accuse my son of anything. You have no idea what he goes through to keep this household running while you play on your computer all day." "I paid for this household," I said. My voice came out steady. Too steady. "I've paid the mortgage every month for 3 years. I paid for the roof repair last spring. I paid for your son's car insurance when he forgot and it lapsed. I paid for the granite countertops you're putting your fingerprints all over right now." "With what money?" Diane laughed again. "You don't have money. You have a hobby that makes pennies." I picked up the lottery check, turned it over, set it on the table between us. $5 million. The Pennsylvania Lottery logo. My name. Today's date. Richard's face went white. Diane's mouth opened. No sound came out. "I was coming home to surprise you," I said to my husband. "I bought the ticket at the gas station on Maple Road on my way back from meeting a client in Philadelphia. I won. I checked the numbers 3 times. I went to the lottery office this morning. I was going to tell you we could pay off the house. Take that trip to Japan you always talked about. Maybe start trying for kids." I picked up the divorce papers. Page 7, page 12, page 18. Yellow tabs marking where I was supposed to sign away everything. "But you'd already decided I was worth exactly half of your credit card debt and nothing else. Let me take you back 6 years to the day my father died. I was 27. He'd been sick for 8 months. Pancreatic cancer. The kind that doesn't give you options, only timelines. I was sitting in his hospital room at 6:14 a.m. on a Thursday. The nurses had just changed shift. Dad was awake, but groggy. He reached for my hand. "The life insurance policy," he said. His voice was barely a whisper. "It's $240,000. I want you to use it for something permanent. Not a car, not a vacation, a house. Roots." I'd been crying for 3 days straight. I couldn't cry anymore. I just sat there holding his hand. "You're going to meet someone," he continued. "You're going to want to build a life. When you do, use this money for the down payment. Put the house in both names if you love him. But keep records, Ladybug. Keep every receipt. Keep every bank statement. Keep proof that you put that money in." Ladybug. He'd called me that since I was 4 years old because I'd insisted on wearing red polka dot rain boots every single day for a year. "I will, Dad. Promise me." "I promise." He died 18 hours later. I was holding his hand when the monitors went flat. The life insurance check came 6 weeks after the funeral. $240,000. I put it in a savings account and didn't touch it for 8 months. Then I met Richard at a friend's wedding. He was charming. He was attentive. He brought me coffee in the morning and left notes on my car windshield. His mother hated me from day one. I wasn't successful enough. I wasn't polished enough. I wasn't enough. But Richard said he loved me anyway. He said his mother would come around. We got married 14 months after we met. Small wedding. His family. My 2 cousins. My best friend Kara as my maid of honor. 3 months later, we found the house. A brick colonial on Elmwood Avenue. 4 bedrooms. A yard. Walking distance to the elementary school Richard said our future kids would attend. The down payment was $200,000. I transferred it from my savings account on a Tuesday morning. The closing was on Friday, both our names on the deed. Joint ownership. I kept the wire transfer receipt. I kept the savings account statement showing the $240,000 deposit from Dad's life insurance. I kept the closing documents. I kept everything. Because I'd promised. The first betrayal wasn't the divorce papers. It was 3 months after we bought the house. We were having dinner with Richard's family. Diane's dining room, white tablecloth, the good china, Richard's sister Olivia and her husband Jamal. Richard's father had passed away 2 years earlier, so Diane held court alone at the head of the table. "I'm so proud of Richard," Diane said, raising her wine glass. "Buying a house at 29. Not many young men have that kind of financial discipline." I smiled. "We bought it together. The down payment came from Richard's signing bonus from Mercer and Associates," Diane continued, not even looking at me. "He worked so hard for that promotion, and now you two have a beautiful home to show for it." I set my fork down. "Actually, the down payment was from my father's life insurance policy, $200,000. Richard contributed to closing costs. And, well, yes, technically your name is on the deed too," Diane said. She said it the way you'd say technically the sun rises in the east, like it was an unfortunate fact of nature. "But Richard's income is what's paying the mortgage. Your little design projects are very sweet, honey, but let's be realistic about who's providing for whom." Richard cut into his steak. He didn't say anything. "I pay half the mortgage," I said. My face was burning. I could feel everyone looking at me. "I've been paying half since we moved in." Olivia laughed. The kind of laugh that's not really a laugh. "Naomi, come on. Richard makes $140,000 a year. You make what, maybe $25,000 with your Etsy thing?" "I'm a freelance graphic designer. I made $67,000 last year. I have a contract with—" "That's adorable," Diane said. She patted my hand like I was a child who just claimed to be an astronaut. "It's wonderful that you have hobbies. Richard's father always said it's important for wives to have interests outside the home, keeps them from getting bored." I pulled my hand back. "It's not a hobby, it's my career." "Of course it is, sweetheart." Diane smiled. She turned to Richard. "Did you see the Johnsons bought that lake house in the Poconos? Maybe next year you two could look at something like that, an investment property. Richard, you'd be so good at managing rentals." The conversation moved on. I sat there with my face on fire and my hands shaking in my lap. Richard drove us home in silence. When we got to the house, our house, the one I'd paid $200,000 to own, I finally said it. "Why didn't you tell her the truth?" "About what?" "About the down payment. About my income. About any of it." He pulled into the garage, turned off the car, sat there for a long moment. "My mom's old-fashioned," he finally said. "She has certain ideas about how things should work. If I correct her every time she says something, it just turns into a fight. It's easier to let it go." "Easier for who?" He looked at me like I was being unreasonable. "For everyone. Why does it matter what she thinks? We know the truth." But here's what I didn't understand then. The truth only matters if someone's willing to defend it. Over the next 3 years, I watched the story of our house change. At family gatherings, Richard bought the house with his promotion bonus. At his company holiday party, Richard was the young homeowner everyone admired. At Diane's birthday dinner, Richard was so generous to put my name on the deed, even though I barely contributed. I stopped correcting people. It turned me into the nagging wife, the ungrateful daughter-in-law, the woman who didn't appreciate how lucky she was. I kept working. Freelance graphic design for tech startups, small businesses, nonprofits. I built a client list. I built a reputation. I built an income that matched Richard's by year 4. I also opened an Etsy shop selling printable planners and wall art. It made about $800 a month. Not much. But Diane saw the Etsy shop. She never saw the client invoices for $15,000 logo packages or the $8,000 website redesigns. So in her mind, I made $800 a month playing on the computer while her son paid for everything. And Richard never corrected her. The mortgage came out of our joint account. I transferred my half in every month. $2,847. Direct deposit from my business checking account. 3 years, 36 payments, $102,492. I kept every bank statement because I'd promised. The day after Diane told me to sign the divorce papers, I went to work. My home office, the spare bedroom we'd painted pale blue because Richard said it had good light. I had 3 client projects due that week. A rebrand for a dental practice in Pittsburgh, a website mock-up for a wedding photographer, a complete visual identity package for a new coffee roasting company. I worked from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. I barely ate. I didn't answer Richard's texts. He'd moved into his mother's house the night before. He'd packed a bag while I was in the shower and left a note on the kitchen counter. Attorney will be in touch. Don't do anything rash. Don't do anything rash. I'd won $5 million and he was worried I'd do something rash. My friend Kara called on Wednesday. I heard from Olivia's husband. She said you're getting divorced and Richard's broke because you maxed out credit cards. My hand stopped moving on the keyboard. What? Jamal said Richard had to file for separation because you'd racked up $60,000 in debt and he couldn't afford to pay it. He said Diane had to hire him an attorney because you'd drained the joint account. I pulled up my banking app. Joint checking account. Balance, $47,322.18. I deposited $15,000 2 weeks ago from a client payment. Richard's last paycheck had been $4,200 after taxes. The account had never been drained. It had never even been low. Kara, I said slowly, none of that is true. I didn't think so, but that's what they're telling people. Olivia posted on Facebook that family comes first, and sometimes you have to protect the ones you love from users. There it was again. Users. I hung up and opened Facebook. Olivia's post was public. 174 likes, 43 comments. So proud of my brother for having the courage to walk away from a toxic situation. Some people only want you for what you can give them. Richard deserves someone who supports him instead of dragging him down. I read every comment. I didn't recognize half the names. Richard's coworkers, his college friends, people from his gym. They all believed I was the villain in a story I didn't even know I was in. I closed Facebook, closed my laptop, sat in my pale blue office and stared at the wall. Something had cracked open inside me. Not grief, not rage, something colder. I'd been invisible for 6 years. I'd paid for half of everything and received credit for nothing. I'd worked 60-hour weeks and been called a hobbyist. I'd put $200,000 into a house and been told I was lucky to have my name on the deed. And now I was being erased completely. I opened my laptop again. I opened a folder I'd created 3 years ago. I called it House Records. Inside, the wire transfer for $200,000, the life insurance statement, the closing documents, 36 mortgage payment receipts, 3 years of business income statements, client contracts with payment schedules, time-stamped project files, external hard drive backups of every design I'd ever created with metadata showing exactly when and where I'd worked. I'd kept everything, because I'd promised. The public humiliation came on a Friday afternoon. I was meeting a new client at Brew Haven, a coffee shop on Lancaster Avenue. The client was a physical therapist opening a new practice. She wanted a logo, business cards, and a website. We'd been talking for maybe 15 minutes when Diane walked in. She wasn't alone. Olivia was with her. So was Richard's Aunt Margaret. They saw me. I watched Diane's face light up like she'd just won something. She walked straight to my table. Naomi. She said my name the way you'd say a curse word. I'm surprised you can afford coffee here. Aren't you supposed to be watching your spending? My client looked confused. I set my pen down very carefully. Hello, Diane. This is your office now? Diane looked around the coffee shop. I suppose it's appropriate. Richard said you'd have to downsize eventually, though I didn't think you'd be conducting business in a Starbucks. It's Brew Haven, I said. My voice came out calm, flat. And this is my client, Dr. Rebecca Martinez. We're discussing her new practice. Dr. Martinez extended her hand. Nice to meet you. Diane ignored her. Richard wanted me to ask when you'd be moving your things out of the house. His attorney said you have until the end of the month, but honestly, the sooner the better. He has someone who wants to move in. The coffee shop had gone very quiet. There were maybe 8 other people there. All of them were now watching us. Someone who wants to move in, I repeated. A professional woman, someone who actually contributes. Diane smiled. She was enjoying this. You understand. Richard needs a partner, not a dependent. Dr. Martinez was staring at her coffee cup. The barista had stopped wiping down the counter. I looked at Diane. Really looked at her. The pearl necklace, the designer purse, the perfectly highlighted hair. All of it paid for by the son she'd convinced he was supporting a wife who contributed nothing. I paid for that house, I said quietly. $200,000 down payment. 3 years of mortgage payments at $2,847 per month. I have the bank statements. Of course you do. Diane's voice went sharp. You probably forged them. That's what desperate people do when they're about to lose everything. They create fake documents. Olivia, standing behind her mother, nodded. Richard said you'd try this. He said you'd make up lies about money that doesn't exist. Something hardened in my chest. Something that had been soft and hoping for 6 years. I picked up my phone, opened my banking app, pulled up the joint account, turned the screen toward Diane. $47,322, I said. That's what's in our joint checking account right now. I deposited $15,000 on August 28th. Richard deposited $4,200 on September 1st. The account has never been drained. Want me to pull up the mortgage payment history? Diane's face went tight. That's private financial information. You have no right to... It's my account too, I said. My name is on it. Just like my name is on the house deed. Just like my name is on the wire transfer that paid for the down payment. The coffee shop was completely silent now. Dr. Martinez was looking at Diane like she'd just realized something unpleasant. Diane leaned in close. Her voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried across the whole room. You think you're clever. You think you can waltz in here with your fake lottery ticket and your fabricated bank statements and steal what my son has worked for. But I've been dealing with women like you my entire life. You're not special. You're not unique. You're just another user who got caught. She turned and walked out. Olivia followed. Margaret hesitated, looked at me with something that might have been pity, then followed them. I sat there for a long moment. My hands were shaking. My face was burning so hot I could feel my pulse in my teeth. Dr. Martinez cleared her throat. I'm so sorry you had to deal with that. It's fine, I said. It wasn't fine. Nothing about it was fine. For what it's worth, she said gently. I believe you. About the house, about all of it. I looked at her. She was maybe 40, kind eyes, wedding ring. Thank you, I said. We finished the meeting. I gave her my standard pitch. She hired me on the spot, $8,500 for the full package. When I got home that night, I found a letter taped to the front door. It was from Richard's attorney. Notice of mediation. Mandatory attendance. September 28th at 2 p.m. at Harrison and Webb Law Offices on Walnut Street. The letter listed what Richard was asking for in the divorce. The house, sold, with proceeds split 70-30 in his favor due to his primary financial contribution. The joint checking account, split 70-30. All furniture and household items purchased during the marriage. And me taking full responsibility for $30,173.59 in credit card debt. There was a note at the bottom in handwriting I didn't recognize. Your attendance is mandatory. Failure to appear will result in default judgment in favor of petitioner. Come prepared to negotiate reasonably. I read it 3 times, then I called the only attorney I knew. My father's estate attorney had been a woman named Caroline Reeves. She'd handled Dad's will, the life insurance payout, all the paperwork after he died. She'd given me her card 6 years ago and told me to call if I ever needed anything. I'd kept the card in my wallet. I'd never used it, until now. I called her office at 8:47 a.m. on Monday morning. The receptionist put me through. "Naomi," Caroline said. Her voice was warm. "I was wondering when you'd call." That stopped me cold. "What?" "Your father came to see me about a month before he died. He asked me to keep an eye on things, to make sure you were okay. I've been checking in periodically, public records, property deeds, that sort of thing." My throat went tight. "You've been watching me?" "Not watching. Monitoring. There's a difference." I heard papers rustling. "I saw the separation filing last week. I saw the property lien application Richard filed trying to force a sale. I saw the credit card debt he's trying to assign to you." "He maxed out a card on his affair," I said. My voice cracked. "He's trying to make me pay for it." "I know. I also know about the offshore account." I sat down hard on the couch. "What offshore account?" "Richard opened a business account in the Cayman Islands in March. He's been funneling money there from his bonus payments, about $180,000 so far. He filed for legal separation specifically so those funds would be considered separate property acquired after the marriage ended." The room was spinning. "How do you know this?" "Because I'm very good at my job, and your father paid me a retainer 6 years ago specifically to be ready for this moment." I couldn't breathe. "What moment?" "The moment when the person you married turned out to be the person your father worried they might be." I sat there in silence. Outside, I could hear a dog barking, a car driving past. Normal sounds from a normal world that had just tilted completely sideways. "Your father knew," Caroline said gently. "He didn't want to interfere with your happiness, but he knew the kind of man who'd ask you to put his mother's comfort above your truth. He knew the kind of family who'd erase your contributions and rewrite history. So he asked me to prepare." "Prepare what?" "Everything you'll need to protect yourself. Will you come to my office? I have some things to show you." I went to her office that afternoon. Harrison Street, 3rd floor. The same building where the mediation would be held in 2 weeks. Caroline's office was exactly what you'd expect from a woman who'd been practicing law for 30 years. Mahogany desk, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a photo of her wife and their 2 golden retrievers. She handed me a sealed envelope, my name on the front, my father's handwriting. "He left this with me when he revised his will. He said to give it to you when you needed it most. I think that time is now." My hands were shaking so badly I could barely open it. Inside was a letter. 2 pages. My father's handwriting, dated 6 days before he died. I read it standing up because my legs wouldn't hold me if I sat down. "Dear Ladybug, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and something has happened that made you need proof. I'm sorry I'm not there to help you fight this battle. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from whatever pain brought you to this moment. But I want you to know something. I saw this coming, not the specifics. I didn't know who or when or how, but I knew that putting your name on a house deed wouldn't be enough. I knew that paying half the bills wouldn't be enough. I knew that building a career and contributing equally wouldn't be enough because some people don't see contribution. They only see opportunity. So I prepared. Do you remember that day in the hospital when I made you promise to keep records? I wasn't just being a worried father. I was giving you a weapon, because I knew that someday someone might try to claim you never contributed anything. And on that day, you'd need proof. I also did something else. Something I didn't tell you about because I didn't want you to feel watched or distrusted. I hired Caroline Reeves, not just to handle my estate, but to monitor your major financial transactions, the house purchase, any joint accounts, any large debt. I gave her a retainer that's good for 10 years. I asked her to watch for red flags. If you're reading this, she's already found them. Inside the safe deposit box at First National Bank, you'll find copies of all wire transfers and closing documents for your house purchase, a forensic accounting report I commissioned tracking household expenses, the original life insurance policy with disbursement records, a letter I wrote to your future spouse that Caroline will deliver if needed, documentation of every birthday, holiday, and family gathering where I witnessed you being diminished. Box number 847. The key is with Caroline. She's co-signer on the account. You are not a user, Ladybug. You are not a dependent. You are not lucky to have your name on anything you paid for. You are my daughter. You are brilliant and capable and generous to a fault. You work harder than anyone I've ever known. You give more than you should because you have a good heart. Don't let anyone convince you that being kind means being invisible. The truth is in the documents. The proof is in the numbers. Caroline will help you present it when the time comes. I love you, I'm proud of you. And I'm sorry I can't be there to watch you stand up for yourself, but I know you will. Because you're my ladybug, and ladybugs are tougher than they look. All my love, Dad. I read it twice, then a third time. Then I sat down in Caroline's guest chair and cried for 20 minutes straight. When I finally stopped, Caroline handed me a tissue and a bottle of water. He really did all this? I asked. Every word. The safe deposit box is ready. I have the forensic report. I've been tracking Richard's offshore transfers. I've documented the credit card fraud. And I've prepared a presentation for the mediation that will make it very clear who contributed what to this marriage. I wiped my eyes. Richard doesn't know any of this exists. No. Neither does his attorney. Neither does Diane. They think you're a graphic designer with an Etsy shop who can't possibly afford good legal representation. They think you'll show up to mediation, get overwhelmed, and sign whatever they put in front of you. What do they not know? Caroline smiled. It was a sharp smile, the kind that meant business. They don't know that you kept records. They don't know that your father prepared for this. They don't know about the forensic accounting, and they definitely don't know about the lottery. I'd told her about the lottery on the phone. $5 million. I'd already hired a financial advisor, already set up a trust, already made plans to protect it. Here's what's going to happen, Caroline said. She pulled out a folder. You're going to show up to mediation on September 28th. You're going to listen to Richard's demands. You're going to listen to his attorney try to bully you, and then you're going to let me present the truth. What truth? All of it. The $200,000 down payment, the 36 mortgage payments you made, the $67,000 average annual income you earned that they pretended didn't exist. The offshore account Richard opened to hide his bonus. The affair he funded with a credit card he's trying to make you pay for. The tax evasion the IRS is very interested in hearing about. Every single lie they told to make you look like a dependent when you were actually subsidizing his lifestyle. My hands had stopped shaking. Something was settling in my chest, something clear and cold and absolutely certain. I don't want revenge, I said. I know. You want truth. That's better. Truth has legal consequences. The mediation was scheduled for September 28th at 2 p.m. I didn't sleep the night before. I kept reading Dad's letter. I kept thinking about the promise I'd made. Keep records, Ladybug. I'd kept them. I showed up at Harrison and Webb at 1:45 p.m. Caroline was already there. So was Richard's attorney, a man named Douglas Phelps, who looked like he charged $600 an hour. Richard was there. So was Diane. So were Olivia and Jamal. So was Richard's Aunt Margaret and his Uncle Tom and his cousin Stephen. The whole family had shown up like this was a performance. I was wearing a gray suit I'd bought for a client presentation, my hair in a bun. No jewelry except my wedding ring. I looked exactly like what I was, a professional woman who'd worked for everything she had. Diane looked me up and down when I walked in. I'm surprised you came. It's mandatory, I said. Most people would be too embarrassed. But I suppose when you have nothing to lose, shame stops mattering. I didn't respond. I sat down in the chair Caroline indicated. She sat next to me. Richard sat across the table with Douglas Phelps. The family spread out along the sides like a jury. The mediator was a tired-looking man in his 60s named Frank Morrison. He opened a folder and launched into the standard speech about good faith negotiation and reaching mutually agreeable terms. Douglas Phelps didn't wait for him to finish. My client is willing to be generous, he said, despite the significant financial burden Ms. Chen has placed on this marriage. Mr. Chen is willing to offer a 70-30 split of all marital assets in his favor, with Mrs. Chen assuming full responsibility for the credit card debt she incurred. I didn't incur it, I said. My voice was calm, quiet. You're an authorized user. You benefited from the marital lifestyle those purchases funded. The purchases were hotels and jewelry for the woman he was having an affair with. How did I benefit from that? Richard's face went red. Diane leaned forward. How dare you, she said. My son has been nothing but faithful. The fact that you'd make these accusations shows exactly the kind of person you are. Caroline pulled out a document, slid it across the table. Credit card statement. Capital One Platinum. Account opened February 14th of this year. Cardholder Richard Chen. Authorized user Naomi Chen. Charges include Ritz-Carlton, Philadelphia, 14 nights between March and August. Tiffany and Company, $8,400 bracelet purchased July 22nd. Le Bernardin, New York, 12 dinner reservations for two. I have the receipts. I also have Richard's work calendar showing he was supposedly at business dinners on 11 of those 12 nights. Either his employer is committing tax fraud by deducting personal entertainment, or Richard lied about where he was. Would you like me to send this to Mercer and Associates accounting department? The room went very quiet. Douglas cleared his throat. The affair is not relevant to the asset division. The affair funded by a credit card he's trying to assign to my client is absolutely relevant, Caroline said. It's called marital waste. The court takes a very dim view of spouses who dissipate marital assets on extramarital relationships. Richard was staring at the table. Diane was staring at me with pure hatred. Richard filed for legal separation on September 3rd, Douglas continued. Any assets acquired after that date are separate property, including the bonus he received from his employer. September 3rd, Caroline repeated. She pulled out another document. The same day, he received notification of a $180,000 performance bonus. How convenient. Except he filed the separation without informing my client or obtaining her signature. A legal separation requires both parties' knowledge and consent. This filing is invalid. Douglas's face went tight. We followed all proper procedures. You filed paperwork, you didn't obtain consent, which means the separation isn't legal, and the bonus Richard received is still marital property subject to division. Caroline pulled out a third document. Also, I have documentation showing Richard opened an offshore account in March and has been transferring funds there, $180,000 so far, hidden from his spouse. That's fraud. The mediator was writing very fast. Richard's Uncle Tom had his phone out, taking notes. Furthermore, Caroline continued, her voice never rising, always perfectly calm, my client would like to address the claim that she contributed minimally to the household finances. She pulled out a folder, thick, organized with tabs. Wire transfer dated October 15th, 6 years ago. $200,000 from Naomi Chen's savings account to the escrow account for the purchase of 472 Elmwood Avenue. Source of funds, life insurance policy from her deceased father. This was the down payment for the house Richard claims he purchased with his signing bonus. She slid the document across the table. Douglas picked it up. His face went carefully blank. Bank statements from the joint checking account for the past 36 months. showing monthly transfers of $2,847 from Naomi Chen's business account to cover her portion of the mortgage. Total contributed $102,492. Another stack of papers. Business income records for Chen Design Studio, a sole proprietorship owned and operated by my client. Average annual income for the past 3 years, $67,000. Client contracts, payment records, and 1,099 forms all included. The room was completely silent now. Olivia had stopped whispering to Jamal. Margaret was staring at the documents like they might bite her. Time-stamped project files with metadata showing my client worked an average of 58 hours per week. External hard drive backups of every design project, every client communication, every invoice, including a logo design created on July 22nd between 8 p.m. and 11:14 p.m., the same night Richard charged $8,400 at Tiffany & Company in Manhattan. Caroline looked at Richard. You can't be in 2 places at once. The metadata doesn't lie. Richard's hands were shaking. He wouldn't look at me. Now, Caroline said, let's talk about what my client is actually owed. She contributed $200,000 to the down payment. She paid $102,492 in mortgage payments over 3 years. The house is currently valued at $580,000. The mortgage balance is $320,000. That's $260,000 in equity. By any reasonable calculation, my client owns at minimum 65% of this house. Douglas was flipping through the documents. His face had gone from confident to concerned to something approaching panic. There's more, Caroline said. She was enjoying this now. I could hear it in her voice. The IRS received an anonymous tip last week about an offshore account opened by Richard Chen containing funds that were never reported on his tax returns. They've opened an investigation. They're very interested in the $180,000 that seems to have disappeared from his income statements. Richard's face had gone completely white. Diane was gripping the edge of the table. Anonymous tip, she said. Her voice was shaking. You reported my son to the IRS. I didn't report anyone, Caroline said calmly. I submitted publicly available documents showing a discrepancy between reported income and known assets. The IRS makes their own determinations. The mediator cleared his throat. Mr. Phelps, do you need a moment to consult with your client? Douglas was staring at the offshore account documentation. Yes, we need a moment. Take your time, Caroline said. Richard stood up. So did Douglas. They went into the hallway. Diane followed them. So did Olivia and Jamal. I sat there with Caroline. Frank Morrison was reviewing his notes. Richard's Uncle Tom was still on his phone. Aunt Margaret was looking at me like she'd never seen me before. You kept all those records, she said finally. Yes. For 3 years. 6 years, actually, since the day we bought the house. Why? I thought about my father, about the hospital room, about the promise. Because someone told me to, someone who knew I'd need them. They came back 15 minutes later. Richard looked sick. Diane looked furious. Douglas looked like a man who'd just realized he'd walked into a case he couldn't win. My client would like to propose a revised settlement, he said. His voice had lost all its confidence. I'm listening, Caroline said. 60-40 split of the house equity in Ms. Chen's favor. She keeps the full joint checking account. Mr. Chen assumes full responsibility for the credit card debt. No spousal support requested by either party. No, Caroline said. Douglas blinked. Excuse me? That's not acceptable. Here's what my client will accept. She keeps the house. Full ownership. Mr. Chen's name removed from the deed. He receives $50,000 as his share of equity, roughly what he contributed to closing costs 6 years ago. She keeps the joint checking account. He keeps his offshore account, and will let the IRS sort out the tax implications. He assumes full credit card debt. And he signs a legal separation agreement that's properly filed with both parties' consent, making it clear that any bonus he received prior to today is marital property subject to division. That's absurd, Diane said. Richard paid for that house. Richard's income paid the mortgage. No, I said. I'd been quiet for so long that everyone turned to look at me. I paid for that house. I put down $200,000. I paid half the mortgage for 3 years. I have 36 bank statements proving it. And I'm done pretending I didn't. I stood up. I pulled out one more document, the last one. I also won $5 million in the Pennsylvania lottery on September 26th, the day before you served me with divorce papers. I have the ticket, I have the claim confirmation, I have the check. I set the lottery stub on the table. That separate property acquired before the legal separation was properly filed. So technically, Richard is entitled to half. But here's the thing. I don't want to be married to someone who filed for divorce the day after I won the lottery without even knowing I'd won it. I don't want to be married to someone who tried to steal a house I paid for and saddle me with debt from his affair. I don't want to be married to someone whose mother spent 6 years telling him I contributed nothing while I quietly paid for everything. I looked at Richard. Really looked at him. The man I'd married 6 years ago was gone. Or maybe he'd never existed. You can have the divorce, I said. You can walk away with $50,000 and your offshore account and your credit card debt and your tax problems. Or you can refuse this settlement, and Caroline will present all of this evidence in court, and the IRS will audit you, and your employer will find out about the affair you funded with business dinners you lied about, and you'll lose everything anyway. The room was so quiet, I could hear the ventilation system humming. Richard looked at his mother. Diane's face was twisted with fury. "Don't you dare," she said to him. "Don't you let this woman steal what you've worked for." "Mom," Richard said. His voice was barely a whisper. "She's a liar. She forged those documents. She's trying to manipulate you the way she's always manipulated you. Users make you feel guilty for protecting yourself, remember? That's what she's doing right now." "Mom, I opened the offshore account. I maxed out the credit card. I filed for separation without telling her because you said it was the smart thing to do." The room went dead silent. Diane's face drained of color. "You're confused. You're under stress. She's manipulating you right now. Can't you see? I cheated on her for 6 months. I spent $60,000 on another woman. I tried to make Naomi pay for it. You helped me plan this." Richard's voice was getting louder. "You told me she was using me. You told me she never contributed anything. You told me I was stupid for putting her name on the deed. Because she was using you," Diane hissed. "She married you for your money and your house, and—" "It was her money!" Richard shouted. "It was her $200,000. It was her father's life insurance. She paid for the down payment. She paid half the mortgage. I knew it the whole time, and I let you convince everyone she was a dependent because it made me feel more successful." The silence that followed was absolute. Olivia was staring at her brother. Jamal was staring at the floor. Uncle Tom had stopped taking notes. Aunt Margaret was crying. "You knew," Diane said. Her voice was hollow. "Of course I knew. I was there when she transferred the money. I signed the closing documents. I saw her business income on our tax returns every year. I knew exactly how much she made and how much she paid, and I let you tell her it didn't matter because it was easier than standing up to you." He turned to me. His eyes were red. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm so sorry. You deserved better. You deserved someone who would defend you. I was a coward. I'm still a coward, but I'm not going to steal from you. I'll take the $50,000. I'll sign whatever you want. I'll take the debt. All of it." I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt tired. "Okay," I said. Caroline pulled out the separation agreement. Richard signed it. So did I. It was over in less than 5 minutes. Richard left with Douglas. Diane sat frozen in her chair, staring at nothing. Olivia and Jamal slipped out quietly. Uncle Tom stopped me at the door. "I'm sorry," he said. "For what it's worth. I should have asked questions. I should have listened. It's okay, I said. It wasn't okay, but I was too exhausted to explain. I went home, to the house that was now mine, just mine. I walked through every room, the kitchen where Diane had handed me divorce papers, the office where I'd worked for 6 years while being called a hobbyist, the bedroom I'd shared with someone who'd let me be erased. I sat down on the living room floor and called my financial advisor. I want to set up a trust, I said. I want to donate $500,000 to pancreatic cancer research in my father's name. I want to set up a fund for women going through divorces who can't afford legal representation. And I want to buy a lake house. Something with a porch. Somewhere quiet. Done, she said. I hung up and sat there in the silence. Then I walked to my desk and pulled out the folder of records I'd kept for 6 years. Every wire transfer, every mortgage payment, every bank statement. I'd kept them because I'd promised, and because keeping them had saved me. 6 months later, I was living in the lake house. 2 bedrooms, wraparound porch, a dock that stretched 30 feet into the water. I'd sold the house on Elmwood Avenue for $580,000. After paying off the mortgage and giving Richard his $50,000, I'd walked away with $210,000. Combined with the lottery money, I was set for life. I'd closed Chen Design Studio and started something new, a nonprofit called Ladybug Legal Fund. We provided free legal assistance and forensic accounting to people going through divorces where one spouse had been financially erased. In 6 months, we'd helped 43 people, 29 women, 14 men, all of them with the same story. Years of being told their contributions didn't matter, only to discover their spouse had been hiding assets or planning to take everything. I worked from my porch. I worked when I wanted to. I helped people prove the truth. Richard had moved to Delaware. I heard from Kara that he'd lost his job at Mercer and Associates after the IRS audit revealed the offshore account. He was selling insurance now, living in an apartment. The woman he'd had the affair with had left him when the money disappeared. Diane had stopped speaking to him. She'd told everyone in the family that I'd manipulated her son and stolen his house. About half of them believed her. The other half had seen the documents. I didn't care either way. I was sitting on my porch on a Tuesday morning in March when I got a call from Caroline. "I thought you should know," she said. "The IRS settlement went through. Richard has to pay back taxes on the offshore account plus penalties. About $90,000 total. He set up a payment plan." "Okay," I said. "Also, Diane tried to sue you for alienation of affection. The judge dismissed it in about 30 seconds. Apparently, she claimed you'd turned Richard against his family." I almost laughed. "Did she?" "She's also claiming you forged your father's letter. She's demanding a handwriting analysis." "Let her have one. It's Dad's handwriting. It'll prove it." "I know. I just wanted to give you a heads up." I thanked her and hung up. Then I walked down to the dock and sat with my feet in the water. The lake was still cold. Spring hadn't quite arrived. But the sun was warm on my face. I thought about my father, about the promise I'd made, about the records I'd kept, about how the truth only matters if someone's willing to defend it. But once you start defending it, you realize you never needed permission to have value. You just needed to stop accepting other people's version of your worth. If you're watching this and you've ever been told your contributions don't matter, told that what you do isn't real work, that what you earn isn't real money, that what you pay for isn't really yours, I need you to hear something. Keep records, keep every receipt, keep every bank statement, keep every wire transfer and every contract and every piece of proof that you showed up and contributed and paid your share. Not because you don't trust the people you love, but because someday, someone might try to convince them that you never did. And on that day, the truth won't be enough. You'll need proof. If you've ever had to choose between being kind and being visible, type "I chose visible" in the comments. Or if you're still trying to figure out how to do both, type "still learning." Both are valid. Both are brave. If this story meant something to you, check the description for more stories just like this one. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, ladybugs are tougher than they look.